Picture this, a dusty plain in northern India. The year is 1526. On one side, you've got this massive army, thousands of soldiers, and the thundering weight of war elephants. On the other, a much, much smaller force. And then, all of a sudden, a new sound just rips through the air, the roar of cannons. That one sound, that single moment, would change the entire course of Indian history, forever. So today, we're going to break down the First Battle of Panipat, the incredible clash that toppled one empire and forged a new one.
Okay, let's get right to it, because this is the real mystery, isn't it? I mean, it sounds completely impossible. You have an army outnumbered almost 7-1, and they're facing what were basically the tanks of their day, these giant war elephants. So how in the world could they have pulled off a win? Well, the answer isn't just about bravery. It's a story of weakness, ambition, and a totally revolutionary way to fight a war. To really understand how this battle went down, we first need to take a look at the major power in the region at the time, the Delhi Sultanate. By the early 1500s, this once mighty empire was, let's just say, showing some serious cracks. And it was all being led by a sultan named Ibrahim Lodi. Now, what's so fascinating here is that the Sultanate's biggest problem wasn't some enemy at the gates. It was coming from inside. Ibrahim Lodi had a reputation for being arrogant. He pushed out his most powerful nobles and governors, the very people he needed, and replaced them with guys who were just loyal to him. As you can imagine, this created a ton of resentment and division. So on paper, his empire looked strong, but in reality, it was kind of rotting from the inside out. And into this mess steps our challenger, Babur. Now get this, he's a descendant of two of the most legendary conquerors in all of history, Timur and Genghis Khan. Babur had his eyes on India. He'd raided the place before, but this time was different. He wasn't just there for loot anymore. He wanted the whole thing. He wanted to rule. And believe it or not, some of Lodi's own unhappy nobles actually invited him in, hoping Babur would help them get rid of their own sultan.
So, the stage is set for a truly incredible showdown. Let's take a look at how these two armies actually stack up against each other, because the numbers, they're just mind-boggling. Okay, so on one side, you have Ibrahim Lodi with this enormous force. We're talking maybe up to 100,000 soldiers and 1,000 war elephants. His whole strategy was based on sheer numbers and overwhelming force. Then you look at Babur's army, a tiny fraction of that size, maybe 15,000 men, tops. But, and this is a huge but, they had two game-changing advantages: a super disciplined and fast-moving cavalry, and something Lodi had never, ever seen before: Ottoman-style cannons. I mean, just look at that difference. It's staggering. If you were just betting on the numbers, this thing should have been over before it even started. Lodi had every reason to be confident, right? But Babur wasn't planning on fighting a normal battle. Nope. He was planning to completely rewrite the rules of war. And here's the key takeaway. Babur's victory wasn't really won on the battlefield that day. It was won in his mind, way before the first shot was ever fired. He knew he couldn't win a head-on fight, so he planned to make Lodi's numbers totally irrelevant with smarter tactics and better tech. His first brilliant tactic was something called the Tulughma strategy. This was a classic move used by nomadic horsemen, something his ancestors had perfected. The idea is simple. Don't just meet the enemy head-on. Instead, you divide your smaller force into different groups that can wrap around and attack the bigger army from the sides and even from the back. It's designed to create total confusion and panic. So let's break that down real quick. You've got a heavily defended center, basically a wall designed to soak up the enemy's first big charge. Then you have these super fast cavalry units on the left and right. Their job is to wait for the enemy to get stuck on the center and then sweep around the sides. And he always kept a reserve force, just waiting for that perfect moment to charge in and deliver the knockout punch. And to protect that all-important center, Babur used another genius idea: the Araba system. He literally took hundreds of carts and chained them together to create this makeshift fortress on the battlefield. This wall would completely stall Lodi's charge, but more importantly, it gave perfect cover for his most valuable weapons, the cannons and his gunmen, who were positioned in the gaps between the carts. So the carts were for defense, the flanking was for offense, but the one thing that really, truly tipped the scales in this battle, it wasn't just about tactics or physical barriers. It was something brand new and completely terrifying for an Indian battlefield. This was Babur's ace in the hole. When those cannons fired, the sheer noise, a sound that no one there had ever heard on that scale before, it caused absolute panic among Lodi's war elephants. These huge animals, which were supposed to be his greatest weapon, instantly became his biggest nightmare. They were terrified, confused, and they turned and stampeded right back through their own lines, crushing their own soldiers and shattering Lodi's entire formation from the inside.
So let's jump to the day itself, April 21st, 1526. The two armies are squared up on the plains of Panipat. You've got Lodi, totally confident in his huge numbers. And you've got Babur, totally confident in his plan. The whole thing unfolds with shocking speed. Lodi's massive army charges forward, expecting to just steamroll Babur's little force. But they slam into that wall of carts. Then the cannons roar, the elephants freak out. And just as chaos is erupting in the Sultanate's army, Babur's cavalry wings sweep in from both sides, completely surrounding the much, much larger army. Lodi's soldiers are now trapped, squeezed together, and getting hit from every direction. By noon, it's all over.
The result was just devastating. A ridiculously decisive victory for Babur. More than 20,000 of Lodi's soldiers were killed on the field that day, and right there among them was the Sultan himself, Ibrahim Lodi. And with his death, the entire leadership of the Sultanate army just fell apart.
This wasn't just the end of a battle, It was the end of a whole era and the beginning of a brand new one. The impact of this one morning of fighting would reshape the entire Indian subcontinent for hundreds of years to come. So what was the fallout? Well, for starters, the Delhi Sultanate, which had been around for over 300 years, was done, finished. And in its place, Babur laid the foundation for what would become the legendary Mughal Empire. This battle also kicked off the age of gunpowder and Indian warfare, making it the new king of the battlefield. And the site itself, Panipat, became this almost mythical place, a battlefield where the fate of India would be decided again and again. At the end of the day, the First Battle of Panipat teaches us this really powerful lesson that you see over and over again in history. It proves that sheer numbers and just brute force are no match for a smarter strategy, new technology, and a well-disciplined army. Babur showed the world that the sharpest weapon you can possibly have is the human mind. And so that leaves us with one final question to think about. In any conflict, whether it's on an ancient battlefield or, in our world today, what's really more powerful? An established force with overwhelming numbers or a disruptive new idea that completely changes the rules of the game? Panipat gave its answer back in 1526, and it's a question we're all still grappling with today.